Sign 1. A persistent, deep sense of purpose that never fades. From the earliest moments of your life, you've sensed that you were born with a deeper purpose. While many people are content to live for the weekend, to chase fleeting pleasures, or to pursue success for the sake of status or wealth, you feel a constant yearning for something more. You can never quite shake this feeling that you were created for something bigger, something greater, and something that goes beyond the ordinary. This deep sense of purpose isn't a passing thought or a temporary idea. It's a voice within you that calls you forward, guiding you even when the world around you might try to distract you or pull you in different directions. No matter how many times you try to ignore it, drown it out with distractions, or fill the void with material success, the feeling always comes back, and it only gets stronger. This is not just a coincidence or the result of overactive imagination. This is God calling you to something far beyond what you can see right now. Jeremiah 1-5 reminds us of the truth that God knew us before we were even born, before we were even formed in the womb. This means that your purpose wasn't just assigned to you after you came into the world. It was placed on you from the moment of conception. God had a plan for your life even before the world knew your name. And this calling is not something that fades or diminishes over time. It's a persistent, unshakable force within you. This feeling of being set apart, different from the world, can sometimes feel isolating. You might look around and wonder why others seem satisfied with a life of surface-level pursuits, while you feel deeply restless, as if there is always something more, something deeper, something beyond what is visible. Your heart knows this truth. You are created to live a life of meaning, to walk in your purpose, and to accomplish things that reflect the will of God in your life. You are not made to simply exist. You were born to make a difference, to have an impact, and to live for something far greater than the day-to-day routine of the world. When Joseph had his dreams as a young man, he was given a glimpse into the greatness God had planned for him. But he didn't just wake up one day and suddenly become ruler over Egypt. He was thrown into slavery, betrayed by his own brothers, and falsely imprisoned. On the surface, it appeared as if Joseph's dreams were nothing but a foolish fantasy. However, through every betrayal, every hardship, and every setback, his sense of purpose remained unbroken. The calling that God had placed on his life didn't disappear. It became clearer and more certain as he walked through the fires of adversity. And the same is true for you. Your purpose is not something that fades in the face of hardship. On the contrary, the trials you face are part of the refining process. They are shaping you, molding you, and preparing you for what God has in store. No matter how many setbacks you face, your sense of purpose will remain. It is God's hand upon you, reminding you that your life has significance, and that significance will never fade. Sign 2. Intense spiritual battles. When God chooses someone, it's not just a call to greatness, it's a call to battle. The moment you begin to step into your divine calling, the enemy takes notice. He recognizes the potential that God has placed in your life, and he will do everything in his power to try to stop you from walking into your purpose. This is why you faced battles that seemed overwhelming, attacks from unexpected places, and resistance that felt almost insurmountable. The reason for these spiritual battles isn't random. It's because the enemy knows that you have been chosen for something significant. If you were not called for something great, he wouldn't bother attacking you. Consider the life of Joseph again. After receiving dreams of ruling over nations, he was met with betrayal from his own family, sold into slavery, and falsely accused of a crime he didn't commit. From an outside perspective, it seemed as though Joseph was being punished, that his dreams had been dashed, and his future was uncertain. But in truth, Joseph was being positioned for his destiny. Each setback was part of God's preparation. It wasn't the enemy's victory. It was the shaping of Joseph's future. Similarly, in your own life, the battles you face are not signs of failure. They are evidence that you are a threat to the kingdom of darkness. The enemy would not waste his energy fighting someone who wasn't a threat. Every time you face opposition, it's because the enemy sees the power of God's plan for you. The attacks can come in many forms: misunderstandings, betrayals, job losses, health challenges, or personal struggles. But through it all, you are being refined, strengthened, and prepared for the purpose that God has designed. A man who had everything: wealth, health, a large family, and yet, in an instant, everything was taken away. The enemy attacked him from all sides. But in the end, God restored Job with double what he had lost. The trials you face are not without purpose. They are part of the spiritual warfare that you are called to engage in. And through it all, God is fighting for you. Your victory is assured, and the enemy will never have the last word. Sign 3. Drawn to righteousness, even when it's difficult. One of the clear signs that you are chosen by God is the deep conviction that you feel to pursue righteousness, even when it's difficult. While others may feel comfortable chasing after fleeting pleasures or ignoring the consequences of their actions, something inside of you resists that mindset. You can't seem to ignore the pull toward what is good, holy, and just. Even when temptation surrounds you, there is a part of your spirit that compels you to return to God and His ways. This pull toward righteousness isn't just a passing feeling, it's a constant, undeniable conviction that directs your actions and your thoughts. The world may tell you that pleasure is found in material wealth, luxury, or living without constraints, but deep inside, you know that these things cannot satisfy the deep hunger in your soul. When you fall short, when you stumble in sin, it grieves your heart because you are sensitive to the disconnection it creates between you and God. That is the evidence of the Spirit of God within you. David, despite his many flaws, was called a man after God's own heart, because when he sinned, he always turned back to God. He didn't ignore his mistakes or try to cover them up. He acknowledged them and sought God's forgiveness. This is the difference between someone who is merely religious and someone who is truly chosen. A person who is chosen by God cannot be comfortable in sin. When they fall, they are drawn back to God's presence. This conviction is not just a moral sense, it's a spiritual reality. God's Spirit lives within you, and because of this, you are compelled toward righteousness. When you try to follow the crowd or chase the things that the world says are important, you feel empty. The joy, the fulfillment, the peace that others may seem to find in their pursuits of wealth or success simply cannot satisfy you. That emptiness is proof that you were never called to live an ordinary life. You were created to reflect the righteousness of God in the world. And every time you feel convicted, every time you sense that pull toward righteousness, it is a reminder that God's hand is upon your life. You are chosen to reflect His glory. Sign 4. Supernatural provision in impossible situations. In the journey of being chosen, there will be times when it seems as though you have nothing left, no resources, no backup plan, and no way out. Yet somehow, just when you need it most, God provides. This is not mere luck or coincidence. It's God's supernatural provision at work in your life. In 1 Kings 17, Elijah faced a severe famine. There was no food, no water, and no way to sustain himself. Yet, in this impossible situation, God provided. He sent ravens to bring Elijah food, and when the brook dried up, He led him to a widow with only a small amount of flour and oil. In what seemed like the end, God made a way. This kind of provision isn't always about an abundance of wealth. It's about God's timing and direction. Sometimes it's about Him opening doors at the right moment, closing doors that would have led to destruction, or providing the strength you need to endure. Perhaps you've experienced a time when you were facing an impossible situation, maybe a financial crisis, a health scare, or a relationship breakdown, and out of nowhere, a solution appeared. God's provision can take many forms. God's hand of provision. It might come through people, opportunities, or divine timing that cannot be explained. What seems like loss or setback in the moment may later reveal itself as God's preparation for something greater. Just like Joseph, whose betrayal and imprisonment eventually led him to the palace, you may look back and see that God was providing for you all along. Every moment of hardship, every closed door, was a part of God's divine provision. He was setting the stage for your greater purpose. Sign 5. Carrying the weight of others' burdens. When you are chosen by God, your heart begins to break for the things that break His heart. You can no longer walk through life focused solely on your own success, comfort, and happiness. Instead, you feel the weight of others' suffering. You see injustice, pain, and struggles, and you cannot turn away. This isn't a mere personality trait. It's a sign that God has placed His heart inside of you. Nehemiah, living in the lap of luxury and serving in the king's palace, could have turned a blind eye when he heard that the walls of Jerusalem had been broken down. But when he heard the news, he wept. He fasted. He prayed. Why? Because his heart was aligned with God's heart. He was chosen, and as a result, he carried God's burden for the world. In your own life, you may have felt this call to serve others when no one else would. Perhaps you've given when you had very little yourself, or maybe you've stayed up praying for people you've never met. You might feel compelled to lead, serve, or fight for justice, even when it doesn't make sense or doesn't fit into your own plans. These are not accidents. They are signs that God has chosen you for something greater. When you are chosen by God, you cannot look away from the pain of the world. You feel called to make a difference. And that calling doesn't come from you. It comes from the Spirit of God within you. Sign 6. Divine separation from certain people. One of the toughest, yet most important, signs of being chosen is the divine separation from people who are not aligned with your purpose. At some point, you may have experienced the heartache of losing friendships or seeing relationships break apart unexpectedly. What felt like rejection was actually God's protection. Moses grew up in Pharaoh's palace, surrounded by wealth, power, and luxury. But when God called him to lead his people out of Egypt, Moses had to leave everything behind. He couldn't continue living in Pharaoh's court if he was to walk in his true calling. Sometimes, God calls us to leave behind relationships, connections, or comforts that hold us back from our divine destiny. This separation can be painful, especially when it involves what's not meant for your future, making space for what He is preparing. Even if the separation comes slowly or suddenly, trust that God knows what you need. He will guide you toward people who will help you fulfill your purpose, not hinder it. The relationships that remain are the ones that are part of your journey, helping you walk into the greater things God has for you. Sign 7. Attacked but never defeated. The final and greatest sign that you are chosen is that, despite everything you've been through, you're still standing. Life has thrown its hardest punches, yet you have not been defeated. The enemy has tried everything to break you, to attack your mind, your body, your relationships, and your peace. But through it all, you remain. In 2 Corinthians 4-8-9, Paul writes, "We are hard-pressed on every side, but not crushed, perplexed, but not in despair, persecuted, but not abandoned, struck down, but not destroyed." This verse encapsulates the reality of the life of someone chosen by God. The enemy may attack, the storms may rage, but God's protection over your life is unshakable. Job's life is a perfect example. He lost everything: his family, his wealth, his health. Yet, even in the midst of his trials, Job refused to turn his back on God. And in the end, God restored everything to him, giving him even more than he had before. Every attack you faced has been meant to break you, but God's hand has always held you up. You have been through fire, yet you are not consumed. You have been through storms, yet you remain unbroken. That is the power of God's protection over your life. The fact that you are still standing means that God has not finished with you yet. Every battle you fought, every hardship you've endured has only made you stronger. You are chosen, you are protected, and your victory is inevitable. Conclusion. Now that you've recognized these 7 signs, the next question is, what will you do with them? Understanding that you are chosen is just the beginning. The real work starts when you step into your purpose. The battles, the provision, the separation, and the burdens have all been part of God's plan to prepare you for what's ahead. Will you embrace the calling that God has placed on your life? Will you walk forward in confidence, trusting that He has equipped you for everything that lies ahead? You are not here by accident. God has been refining you, protecting you, and leading you towards something extraordinary. The time to step into your divine calling is now. What are you waiting for?